I'm Suzanne Murdoch, MD and co-founder of the Hub Newry, and welcome to Series 4 of the Powering Productivity podcast. Each episode, I explore the stories and insights of SME co-working and flexible workspace operators from around the globe, focusing particularly on regional and neighbourhood spaces and the communities that they drive forward. I chat around the inclusivity, genuine connections, clarity and purpose, and positive impacts that they bring. So let's get started. Welcome back to the Powering Productivity podcast, the show that's all about helping micro business owners, leaders, and local co-working communities to thrive. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you're a regular listener, it's great to have you with us. So today's episode is packed with insights and inspiration. So let's dive straight in. I'm joined by two guests who are driving Ireland's growing co-working, flex and remote working landscape forward, Stephen Carolan and Leah Fairman from Connected Hubs, the national network supporting co-working and enterprise centres across the country. Stephen is the National Hubs Programme Manager at the Western Development Commission. He's been instrumental in driving the strategic growth of Connected Hubs, bringing together and supporting a wide range of co-working spaces from right across Ireland. And joining him is Leah Fairman, a marketing and corporate engagement executive, and she brings a rich background in organisational leadership and social enterprise from across Ireland and Europe, playing a key role in strengthening and growing hub communities nationwide. So I'm genuinely excited about this conversation. I think we'll be talking around the bigger picture of Ireland's co-working strategy, the impact of place-based hubs, the role of human connection, and what the future holds for our communities and workspaces. So before we dive in, if you could each introduce yourselves for our listeners. Leah, can we kick off with you?
Yeah, you did a great introduction already there, Suzanne, and thanks so much for having us on the podcast. So, as you mentioned, my background is in social enterprise. So I guess I was working, like many Irish people, had moved abroad, working in various firms across Europe. I moved back to Ireland just short of 10 years ago now, where I started working in a social enterprise in my hometown, which just happened to be a hub. It wasn't a deliberate move. So I spent 5 years there learning all about the hub world. And definitely that cold face of what it's like to work in a community hub and a business powered hub that's focused on, has a whole kind of range of regeneration challenges for the towns. And after that, I guess I was from the hub side. Then I was started the conversation with Connected Hubs and how the hubs could come together, and was delighted to be offered to get a role to come onto the team, where I've been now for 3 years.
Very good. And Stephen?
Thanks, Suzanne, again for having us on. My background is I qualified as a computer programmer back in the day. I don't think they even use that phrase anymore, but so I have an IT background, worked for many years in a local authority in Mayo County Council, building networks and data centre and all that. So I got involved in this back in 2019. This role was advertised, and it was advertised by the Western Development Commission, but the Department of Rural and Community Development were funding it. A relatively new government department at the time, focused on rural development. I see the clue is in the name, but you will also notice it doesn't have agriculture tagged onto it, which is quite important, because sometimes when that was amalgamated, as it is in the north, actually, the agricultural agenda can overtake the rural one. So with that kind of a sharp focus on rural development, they wanted us to look at our region, and then there's a piece of policy in Project Ireland 2040, which is the government's long-term plan for the development of Ireland, and it features the AEC, which stands for the Atlantic Economic Corridor, and this is runs from Donegal down to Kerry, which is all around our western seaboard. And based on a project I was involved in with 4 other local authorities when I worked in the county council as a broadband officer, which was supporting the national broadband plan rollout in Ireland, which is going on at the moment. This was the early stages of it. We're looking at this and said, look, we set up a project with four hubs in 4 local authorities, which is called DigiWest. And a former colleague in the Western Development Commission, Deirdre Frost, she led that on behalf of us 4 local authorities. And we all chipped in with our expertise. We came up with this idea of it being a network and all that type of thing. And the department looked at this and thought, this is something we should look at for that AEC area. So that's where I started, and that's where what we know today as Connected Hubs started from that. It was about looking at all the hubs. I use the phrase hubs and that's a catch-all phrase for community centre, enterprise centres, remote working hubs, research and development hubs, enterprise hubs. And it was looking at all that very disparate network and seeing what value add could we bring to that to that collective, and see how could we help them become more sustainable, help them to share knowledge, a best practice. Could we provide them with some technology that would help them promote and market themselves? And that's where it's come from. So when we built our plan around that, we reached far and wide stakeholders inside and outside our region, contributors from Northern Ireland as well at the time. We had a number of consultation sessions, and we built a plan off the back of that. And that coincided with change of government in 2020. And we got a new minister who was from outside the region, but very keen on this plan. And she gave basically green lighted it to be a nationwide initiative. And that's how we've been working on ever since.
Interesting. So that was back in 2020, Stephen. It was when you were, I guess, embarking on this, was it very much with the community enterprise centres in mind, or did it involve the private hubs at that stage?
Yeah. So we were starting with a very much, we did a 2-page project charter when I joined. And so you could make what you wanted out of that. But there was a real dearth of information on hubs, be they there's good information on enterprise hubs, and not so much though on other co-working hubs and community and enterprise hubs, which are hubs that had grown up. They'd be the very rural ones. They'd grown up over the years and maybe chased different funding to help keep their enterprise going. And there was very little information on them and what they did. And there was funding applications coming into government departments, and there was phrases like digital hub, innovation hub, community digital innovation hub. All these phrases were being thrown around. It was very confusing. So from the very start, we had to start about first of all finding out where all the hubs were. And there was an understanding, this might answer the question, there was an understanding that there might be about 40 of them in the region. And we finished doing a proper discovery process. In our region alone, there was 114. That's before we went into the national discovery phase. And when we finished that, we established a figure of, we felt there was a target of 400 hubs that we felt were viable in the network, or would classify as a hub. So there was very little information on it. So then that was the problem. So we had to build up that register, and we now host that register on behalf of the Department of Rural and Community Development. And we have a GIS and data analyst, David Murphy, who supports all that work.
And is that all mapped now?
It's all mapped, Suzanne. Yeah, we're using a piece of technology called ArcGIS to map all that, and we did this very early on as well. I would have a background in that kind of technologies, and where I've seen that has been really useful is this is a difficult enough sector to understand if you're speaking in front of a decision maker. So I felt one of the best way to get those people to move from maybe to yes was to do it visually, represent it visually. So when you have stuff on maps, politicians, key decision makers, they understand that, they know the places. And we've been using that ever since. And that register is up to date. It's very precise. We share that with other agencies like the Central Statistics Office. We use it with third level institutions who are looking to do research and all that kind of thing. So it's a real treasure trove of information, and it really is your foundation for any of this kind of work.
And it's great for nomads and freelancers, all those sorts of people looking for different co-working hubs.
It allows us. It's the building blocks. So the mapping side of thing then lets you have the mapping. We have a map. The mapping technology. We use a lot of it. We use a lot of it for research and analysis and that kind of stuff. But that also allows you to produce, I suppose, what would you call a public-facing version of it as well. That's more user-friendly. And that's what you're talking about there, I think, Suzanne, where people can go on there and find where their hub is that they want to work in.
Yeah, absolutely. And Leah, what would you say is the vision for Connected Hubs going forward? Where is it heading?
Well, we have a national hub strategy in the making, which we hope will be published this year by it's an interdepartmental group, government group, including being led by our department, Department of Rural and Community Development, but also the Department of Enterprise Trade and a number of sector bodies like the IDA, Enterprise Ireland, Western Development Commission. So it's really got the full backing of every player in the sector in Ireland. And it's been a really important discussion to bring all of those bodies together, led by the departments, to get a clear vision of where the sector is going. I think at a very simple basis, our first thing is a numerical. It's about getting those 400 hubs so that you have a real geographic spread and a real I guess what's the right word, when you have enough people to really work with to implement things. Yeah. So we're very close to that. I think we're 380 as of today or yesterday. So the next step forward is to really, hubs became more into the public consciousness around COVID. And that gave them a certain idea that hubs are really for people who are predominantly, not going to their main place of work, but, want to work closer to home. And I think that's the public consciousness. But in reality, the capacity of the hub sector to solve and to contribute to solving a lot of challenges in our society is really quite high. So whether you're looking at environmental and sustainability transitions, keeping people closer to home, working in buildings that can be made very sustainable, whether it's regeneration of rural towns, keeping those jobs and letting people in those towns getting high value jobs elsewhere, but also really supporting, and this is an area that we're moving more and more into, really supporting the SME communities and giving them a place to come together in smaller, more rural communities where maybe there isn't a natural base, and the benefits of that. And I think then you're looking at, delivering ways of delivering community initiatives through hubs that are, government policy. So one of the challenges that we've seen across Europe is that the traditional community-based and delivery mechanisms are fading away. It's harder and harder to get volunteers. The old community halls and community groups are being staffed by fewer and fewer people. Where in fact, if you look at something like a hub network in any country, you have all of these buildings, and many in Ireland are social enterprises or led by local authorities or charities. Very few are private operators, and they are really about being the beating heart of their community. That's why they started up. So the government has, and I think they've recognised the power of this potential delivery mechanism for a whole range of, whether it's digitization, whether it's the green economy, whatever it is, that the hubs can be used to bring that in a very real way to the ground.
Yeah, no, actually, that's something really close to my heart as well. Is that I guess, like you said, the beating heart, the more neighbourhood co-working communities. There's a massive need for those. And if we move on to exactly how hubs are contributing to regional development and stronger local economy, what are your experiences with that?
Stephen, do you want to take that one? I think that's something that you're quite passionate about.
That's for me, is it? Yeah, absolutely. The big thing about, I suppose, why we do this or why you're passionate about this is I am from the west of Ireland myself. I grew up in an area called Belmullet, which is way out in North Mayo. Next stop. We actually have a street called American Street. It's not a joke. It's actually called American Street. And immigration was a huge part of my my childhood growing up. Basically, people were being bred for immigration, and the youth were leaving all the time. So I grew up with that, but I was very lucky to get an opportunity where there was change in government, and I was able to get access to. I was able to go to third level, and that was not something that everyone started off secondary school in my year doing. So this for me is, I've got a family of my own now, and I've got friends, and they have people there have moved off and they're living in Dublin and all the rest of it. Where I see this as an opportunity for those people to come back to these areas that they're from, that they like, that they've grown up in, they've had the city life experience, they've had the college experience, all that type of thing, but they can bring their career back with them and grow their career in the place where they're from. And that has the spin-off effect then of these are now people who are spending money in your local communities. They're contributing to the local shops, local bars, restaurants, etc. But also, they're now coming back with lots of skills, and they're able to contribute to the volunteer sector as well. So their local drama group, their local sporting facilities, they're able to contribute their expertise there, and that leads to better outcomes for that community. Also, we're seeing small SME sector, if you like, beginning to look at the hubs and think, I'd like to have a presence in, I'll just pick this out of the air now, in a show, for example, or in Castlebar, which happened recently, a company there that had a HQ in Dublin, and they were around, they work in renewable energy. They wanted to have a presence on the West Coast, where the action is, where the wind is. And they were able to open up a satellite office in the iHub here in Castlebar. So that means more employment, high value jobs in local regional towns.
I also just jump in and say, sorry, Suzanne, I just jump in and say we've talked a lot about kind of the rural and smaller community hubs, but a real acknowledgement that our network is of, hubs of every size, and we've got, really strong innovation, SME startup digital hubs as well. So if we look at hubs like Portershed in Galway, like they've I think last year published like impact reports, and the value that they're bringing to that economy in rural Ireland, in the west of Ireland, is massive, and that kind of has a tip-on effect into the hinterlands, and that we see in Galway in particular, we've got 3 really strong hubs here: Platform 94, Crew, Creative Hub, which I'm in at the moment, and Portershed, who are helping to define Galway as a region where startups and people who are scaling up an international investment wants to come. And I think the hubs are a key part of that in terms of just giving the flavour of the ecosystem of the energy and the entrepreneurship that's here. Similarly, if we look at the RDI hub down in Kerry, the work that they're doing, driving, AI and innovation and trying to be a real leader on that for SMEs. So I think it's important to understand that Connected Hubs isn't simply about the smaller community rural hub. We embrace all of the hubs, and what we find the power of the network is that all of those hubs are interacting with each other within the ecosystem that we are kind of creating or holding that space for them. Our power is that we bring up those hubs. At the heart of our power is we bring those hubs and those hub operators together, whereas before they were operating independently and they didn't have a real mechanism to feed off and learn off each other and grow off each other's successes.
That's exactly what I love about what Connected Hubs is doing, not just joining the operators up, joining the whole membership network up. So in effect, you could be Europe-wide with, if you think about your members and all the different reaches that they have on their own. And Stephen, you were saying about people maybe having their careers elsewhere and coming back, bringing those skill set back. And that, again, I very much resonate with that, because that's how we grew our spaces organically. It was very much for people who've grown up, say, in Newry, gone away, come and brought those skill sets back, but don't necessarily have that platform of community that they once had. So it's all, again, growing in partnership together, sharing contacts, sharing skill sets, even helping each other raise their families, because you're all going through this together. So it's a real rich tapestry of skills and relationships that's there within these hubs. And Leah, Stephen told me that you'd been to France recently and you were working on is it an Interreg project?
Yeah, it's an Interreg project called CODAL. We were invited to come along by Uterus and Gaeltachta, who are the main partner in that. So we were brought along as a stakeholder visit. And I've been involved in a number of these EU projects. We're very lucky that we get to do that. And I have to say the quality of the learning experience has been phenomenal. In particular in Naval, it's a very similar economic region to some of the areas in Ireland where you've got a quite thriving agricultural / kind of old market town, kind of real, not quite industrial centre, but economic centre for the region that has needs to redefine itself and find its place in the world again. And certainly as Stephen was just describing, like Ireland's certainly been through that transition and continues to go through it. So interesting to see how they're going about that. Really interesting. And the focus, what I was particularly interested in was the focus on cooperation and collaboration between all of the people involved in economic regeneration, regardless of the agency, regardless of the state body that they belong to. There was a real clear mission, and they were taking on really big strategic stuff like, reimagining the student areas, the educational areas of the towns, and being prepared to move entire buildings and entire campuses, right down to very day-to-day stuff, like getting all of their own teams in one building where they could, have lunch together and swap and share stories. that was really exciting. What's also really exciting is where we get the chance to go and bring the Connected Hub story, and we find it's really well received when people understand just how Ireland has looked at the hub network and the potential of the hub network as through a completely different lens, maybe to some of the ways that their regional and national governments kind of see it. That it's the collective and the collaborative, the networks, where the real energy is, the hidden magic is. And not simply to take for granted that these individual hubs are, doing such good jobs on their own.
And the message of what you're doing is definitely getting out there. The more and more network or events I go to, there's certainly people that have heard of you and are really interested in, what you're doing next. So
and we love chatting to
keep
people.
Doing what you're doing.
There's nobody that you can't learn something from. I think we've had several conversations this year. I know, Stephen, you're planning. You've got a visit coming up to Estonia.
Yes.
And if we move on to, I guess, the more human-centric co-working side of things, Stephen, what makes co-working communities thrive?
Well, I from the very outset, we started, as I said, when we started off that 2-page charter, project charter back in 2019, started to do some research into finding out where the hubs were. The magic sauce, that you describe it, is the people like yourself, Suzanne, and Leah. The joke is we were probably a year or two into this before we hired somebody who knew what they were doing. Myself and Pauline were Pauline Leonard, my colleague, were working away on our own doing the research behind this. But the hub managers are this magic sauce to it. And sometimes you hear that a hub manager has moved on to a new role or whatever like that. It's always a bit of a, geez, that was really, that woman or that man knew this and they had such knowledge and they were so good at sharing it and all the rest of it. So the hub managers are key to all this. As you know yourself from running the Newry hub, a hub manager can have, depending on where they're located, they can be very, very, very busy people. They can be a cyber security expert in the morning, helping somebody with some cyber issue or internet issue, technology issue. They can be the janitor in the afternoon. They can be the business development coordinator in the evening. So they're the people who really, as Lee used to say, if you get somebody in the door of my hub, I'll convert them to a tenant or to somebody who will use it at least frequently, maybe occasionally. So it's a combination of the hub manager and creating that environment, I suppose, within their hub between the co-workers, the remote workers, for example, working for a company wherever, the SMEs, the entrepreneurs, people, all that different, that gelling, getting those communities to gel together. And then also the other side of it is the community organizations that are more and more beginning to maybe make use of the event spaces and the meeting rooms and even the podcast studios. The network now has a lot of different technology. We just say sometimes we have the biggest podcast network in the country because, and what I mean by that is the hubs have them.
Yeah.
We can promote them for them and push them out there. So it's a lot of those things. But having a good hub manager there that's has you're into digital marketing, gets the power of social media, and knows how to build a community within and without the hub. Because I think maybe the next, and it's happening already, and it has been happening as well for many years, but is what's beyond the four walls of the hub.
Oh yeah.
I think that's where government I'd like to think are interested in this. For as Leah said there about delivering projects, grassroots. If you want to get the climate agenda, we need to know more about it. You need to be educated, and you need to start. That has to be done at the grassroots level up. You need the Ladybird version, the Ladybird books from years ago. We need the Ladybird version of that before we can start to do the really sophisticated stuff. And that's something that can be run through the hubs. I feel with support, adequate supports.
And do you think
on what you said, Stephen, I think what we've definitely found is the hub manager is really definitive in some hubs. But when you break that down, and why we get concerned when we see a good hub manager leaving hub is essentially that hub manager gives the hub an identity. That hub manager often has a really clear idea of what the hub is and what they want, or they feel that the hub's role is in that community, be it a large hub, like a kind of an innovation hub, or be it a smaller rural hub. So I think the next evolution of that, and where we're trying to get to with part of our opportunity in Connected Hubs is to educate the hub managers and those teams on the ground around what hubs are and you know, where their place is in the world. Is for a hub, I think the success factor is a hub, regardless of where it is and what its focus is, that it understands that and it takes ownership of it. So similarly, if you were, you know, a small business operator, you're an entrepreneur, the entrepreneurs that are successful is they know what they're trying to do. They know broadly how they're going about to achieve it, with a prayer to be a bit flexible, depending on the environment. And, you know, they really stick at it. But they're also very open to learning from others and keeping an open mind and wanting to collaborate and get connections and not think that they kind of have to know it all. They don't have to be able to do it all. They don't have to know it all. So I think for us, what we really want to do with Connected Hubs is help hubs have a sense of pride in the fact that they are a hub, that they've got up and running. But the next step isn't just to rely on that one hub manager. It's to take on their identity and share that identity with their community and tell that story really well. I guess is where I'm going with that.
Yeah, that's where I was thinking, and it's very much built on that whole relationship piece and getting to know your members inside out, and almost to the point where you can anticipate what they'll be needing next, even before they might realize that. So you're there, you've got what needs to be there to help them in that whole sustainability piece, and very much engaging with them the whole time so that you know the best ways of them working, what they're looking for. And if the community manager does leave for whatever reason, there's not that big hole. You know, build those relations with each other, so you know, they can hold each other together.
We find this, and you probably find this as well, like the best thing you can have in a hub is one or two people who are community champions, and they almost come into that role by themselves, but they take on that leadership within the community. There's a great book, and I'm going to possibly get the author wrong. It's a guy called Jim Power. I think it's around 1970s. It's called Client Intimacy, or The Power of Intimacy. Where essentially there's three types of business. You've got lean, you've got innovative, or you've got an intimate business. And a lot of consultancies are like this, but I see this as being in the hubs, and it's exactly what you described. It's where you know your clients' needs so well that you're a step 2 or 3 ahead of them. So a great example at the minute is the SME environment. We find the hubs are doing a lot of work and undercover. It's not really well known. We'll be doing more work to try and bring it to light. The power of the work that they're doing with the SMEs across Ireland. The SMEs are in a really tricky position at the minute. You know, it's a very uncertain economic environment, everything that's happening with the US. A lot of SMEs don't really know how that's going to play out over the next 6 to 9 months. So what a good hub is doing is anticipating that. You know, my hub members are going into a period of uncertainty. How can I make them feel more supported? How can I educate them more? How can I give them more opportunities? Like we've got hubs at a minute that are running workshops on how to do better business with the UK, you know, maybe a switch away from the US market. We've got hubs that are going out in marketing and saying, look, you're an SME in the community, you might be struggling at the minute. You don't have to take a membership of the hub, but come in, you know, and you know, just be part of our community and get that support and that networking so that you feel supported in an uncertain environment. So, you know, I think that role of the hub manager, not just to be focused on the day-to-day and on kind of the immediate needs of their community, but to be a step ahead, is also going to be one of the indicators of a really successful hub.
Yeah, it's that whole holistic view and the whole piece around belonging as well, because a lot of the time people can feel quite lonely certainly as a micro business owner, all the juggling. There's so much going on in someone's head at any one time. Beyond the whole relationship piece. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. And then if we move on to maybe around the productivity and innovation side, how do you see co-working hubs supporting the whole productivity innovation, especially for remote teams and freelancers? How does the Connected Hubs piece fit in there?
Well, I suppose in the first instance, we're if you are a startup, for example, and you're looking for you've outgrown your kitchen table or your shed or wherever you're starting off with your business, you need a professional working environment. Connected Hubs, the platform itself, that's one of the things we're trying to do there, is look at this network as a place where you can go in and have a professional business, a working environment. You can have your meetings with your clients that you're trying to impress or trying to get to sign on with you, whatever. And many of these hubs in our, piece of work we did at the beginning was to help classify our hubs. And we call it the AEC Hubs classification system. Now it's up for review. But basically, we come up with 5 different categories. So I'm going to get to your question in a second, but I need to give it a bit of context. So we found that there was a number of hubs at the top that were just more to do with the amount of business developments and supports that they were offering. Some of them were on accelerators, etc. So there's about 6 of those hubs around the country, and we describe them as scaling hubs. So they're really at the cutting edge of supporting businesses to scale. And then there was the next tier down was more regional, in more regional towns, the enterprise centres, and they were running lots of business development skills, supports, and all the rest of it. Some of them with a particular focus. So some of them would have a tech focus, some of them would have maybe a fintech focus, etc. Some of them have a food focus, for example, down in Bia and Athenry. So as I said earlier, the hub and the hub network is a very disparate group. And then you have the rural hubs, community and enterprise hubs, and the research and development hubs. And those are just co-working hubs, and they mightn't do much more than just providing desks and meeting rooms. But you'll find the more and more you get to know them, they're doing lots and lots of other things in the community as well. They're interacting with their local businesses. They're, for example, they're hosting companies. They're using the hubs for their get-togethers, and they're interacting with the local catering provider. And that's, again, given a bit of an economic spillover. So you've all that type of activities happening in these hubs. And I might be working in the hub with, say, the GTech in Belmullet. It's one of the Udros hubs. They're a sub-network within the Connected Hubs network. And they provide business supports there. But there might be something in the Portershed or maybe in the hub in Tulsk, for example, that they want to be involved in. And there's a new speaker there talking about the latest in AI, and they want to get involved in that. The hub network allows that to happen. So that's kind of bringing them all together, bringing that type of knowledge together, where you feel like you're part of a club, basically. So the user interface designer above in Donegal, he's working together with a software developer down in the edge of Waterford. They can through the network they find themselves and they end up doing business together. So I think that's how they're supporting innovation.
I think what you're talking about there is I think, Stephen, you said a great thing once, which was we can't forget that being in a hub in itself, or a hub in itself, is innovative in kind of the history of business, or the way the world is evolving. And typically, so my role is marketing, and one of my roles is to evolve the stories of the companies that are in the hubs. And Stephen and I often have this moment where we would chat and it's like, did you even know this business existed? This type of, and can you believe this business is in a hub? And can you believe this business is in a hub in the far reaches of the west of Ireland on the Wild Atlantic Way? We've got one hub, and just talking about hub near Belmullet, it's got Ipsos Mori is one of the big, massive international survey company. They've got 60 to 90 employees based in hubs in the west of in Mayo. They've also got a small company of 2 people, 2 Germans, and they're running one of the biggest Irish-based Twitch channels in Germany out of that hub. So here's where kind of some of the innovation also happens. So it's we feel innovative and creative and even productive when we're surrounded by other innovative, creative, productive people. That's where the energy comes from. That's where you get new opportunities open up. You get different ideas around how you can work or who you can work with. I think sometimes we can underestimate. It's simply sometimes enough to have that network and to be able to talk about it and encourage people to experience that network. But then Stephen was also mentioning the Connected Hubs Marketplace, which is an innovation that we launched in the back of last year, which is a facility on our platform that helps people find each other. We've started doing, one of our innovations this year is also to work directly with the hub members. So we've done a lot of work up now with the hub teams. We're jumping through that to work directly with the hub members. And we've been rolling out specifically work on AI and helping people build GPTs for themselves. So we recognize that some smaller hubs aren't going to have the ability to bring that type of workshop or that type of expertise to their members. But we can work with the larger hubs and we can find that expertise and we can roll it direct to the members and host that for them. So I think I would say the spirit of the hubs is innovative. The spirit of the hub network, and certainly what we try really hard as a team to, is hold on that spirit of innovation, entrepreneurship, and flexibility, and keep that energy from the top, from what we're trying to drive.
Yeah, brilliant. And moving on to the operator side of things, what would you say you've seen as of the biggest challenges for the operators themselves right now?
The hub, you mean by the hub managers, you mean by operators?
Yeah.
I think what I talked about earlier on is the as Leah said before one time, nobody goes to college to be and says I'm going to study hub management. So I think that's the challenge at the moment. A lot of people end up maybe in the career indirectly, sometimes by accident even. Many times they have different expertise that suit the role. But I would like to see it, and I would love to see us getting to a stage where the hub manager is one of those roles in the community that is that's formalised basically. So maybe there's a course you do at some stage, there's some sort of a accreditation associated with it. And like as Leah said earlier on, and I'm a big advocate of this as well, I volunteer with my local development company here. Volunteers are beginning. Ireland has an over-reliance on the voluntary sector. Definitely down south, they're harder to get now. I think there's maybe some of that maybe as a result of COVID. A lot of volunteers stepped back and said, hang on a second, I've spent a lot of time at that for nothing. So I think that's possibly a challenge that's coming down the line, not just for operators, but for society in general. And those roles, maybe I see them as the next community builders in our localities.
Yeah.
That's probably, and as you said, where's the challenge, or what are the challenges they're facing? That's one of them. I think at the moment is a little bit of the roles aren't there. They can be transient. They can be there for 3 years and now they're not there. This type of thing. So
And
uncertainty.
the fact that the whole sector is evolving so quickly all the time as well. But I think there's a lot more recognition of the fact that the community, the people side of things is shining through and is, from my perspective, the most important element of this. So we have to get that right. And it's a bit like bringing kids up. It doesn't come with an instruction manual. Everyone's changing all the time. So I think getting those fundamentals right and putting some sort of playbook together would be really useful, and working together as a collective to make that happen.
Also, I think the hub managers, and very much in the same as the tourism and hospitality industry, is this weird kind of economic environment that the hubs operate in. Hubs are very sensitive to the economic environment. People, how much money people have in their pockets, how under threat or how much risk SME feels might be coming towards them will drive spending decisions. And sometimes that's outside of the power of a hub manager. There's nothing they can do to influence that. So that's a real challenge as we see what's coming. We get a new president in the US, and all of a sudden, what all of us thought we were to be talking about, this month wasn't what we were talking about. And I think you mentioned also, I think you can't forget that, and you know this more than anybody, Suzanne, is a hub manager isn't of themselves a small business owner juggling everything that you have to juggle in a small business. They've got to look after their clients, they've got to run their marketing, they've got to keep their facilities open, they've got to manage their stakeholders, they've got to do their business plan. Like, the list is endless. So, and as Stephen said, the economic pressure that often, there's just about enough money coming from the supports that they've got to pay for their salary, but not to pay for any support for them. And that's massive. And we have to figure out some way of changing that, because what we're seeing is fatigue and burnout. The people who throw the heart and soul into it and do a really good job are burning out. And then you lose that person from the sector altogether. Like, they don't have a step up. There isn't a let's move up the chain in this organization. It's massive, the expertise, the knowledge, the skills that walk out of the sector.
Yeah, I think there's that whole piece around looking after yourself as a business owner generally, be it a co-working operator or not. And as a co-working operator myself, I have quite often leaned on members and their expertise to see what we can do to help each other. That's been a very big piece here. And again, it helps you learn from each other as well and manage that juggle and that whole energy. So yeah, that's been a big learning piece. And I think it's just an evolving thing that we have to learn to manage look after ourselves. And then if we I'm just cautious of time here. If we look at some of the challenges, I guess, for the business owners themselves, I guess we've talked around a lot, but are there any others that we haven't mentioned that really stick out here right now?
I think they're the obvious ones at the moment. There's just there's nothing worse than uncertainty. I think that's we're all experiencing that, whether you're working in a hub or working in other sectors. That is. I would like to kind of try to look on the positive side of things that Leah said at the top of the call. We do have a national hub strategy now that's going to be launched this year. We have worked for a long time to get the hub network in Ireland imprinted or in the policy framework, if you like. So it's got a focus now in a lot of different documents, policy documents, Project Ireland 2040, the National Remote Working Strategy, etc. Our Rural Future, for example, and now Our Rural Future 2, which is the Rural Development Roadmap policy. Is being developed at the moment, and also on top of that we have that's Our Rural Future. We have the National Hub Strategy, and so I'm looking at those things. I think that there's the program for government. This was struggling to find there. It featured the National Hub Network featured in the program for government. So these are that gives me a sense of commitment from the key decision makers that this sector is going to grow and develop.
Good stuff. Let's move into the quick fire wrap up round. So, Leah, tell me about a hub that's inspired you recently.
Oh, a hub that inspired me recently. Culture City and Culture Coworking in Cork. The team there have such an open mind to taking on new ideas, trying stuff out, really, really thinking about, servicing their clients, taking as a real professional approach. How are we going to work with our clients? What supports do they need? But they bring such energy and such joy to it. And, I love any hub and any business that's prepared to make a mistake, but just get out there and do it. And I'd love to bring that energy to all of our hubs.
Very good. And Stephen?
I'm going to focus on, I'm not going to name any hub actually, but I'm going to name a bunch of hubs. I'm not going to name them because I leave others out. But during Storm 1, I think there's lots of stories down here about shortcomings in various different areas. But I was very disappointed that the light wasn't shone on many of the hubs who stepped up to the plate. And during Storm 1 and started getting the word out there that they were open for business. People struggling to get to work, they could come into these hubs. They moved people around. I was in the hub in Castlebar actually during that time as well, and Rhys Staunton there and Barbara O'Shea were putting people up on desks and into meeting rooms, and people were able to get on with their get on with their day's work. But also there was hubs offering people to come in, showers, for example, come in and make phone calls, that type of thing. So I was kind of thinking about this whole thing and my background in the local authority. They played a role in major emergency planning there. They were actually a response. So that's what I think that's one to keep an eye on. Again, I think there's a whole resilience piece there about that we used to have the season of storms down here before COVID. It's still a thing where you'd have weather warnings, don't travel to work and all the rest of it. But these hubs might provide a solution there again with support.
That's a great story to finish on. So where can people find out a bit more about you and Connected Hubs, Leah?
Well, the website is the first place to go, connectedhubs.ie. We're really easy to find. And obviously we're active on all the main social media channels, and just simply look up Connected Hubs. But also we love to have a great conversation with anybody. So drop a line to info@connectedhubs.ie. Either Stephen, myself, or colleagues jump on a quick call